Welcome back to the Mega Floating Shelf Challenge 2026, where I am just attempting to see how much progress I can make on a room-sized, in-scale train layout this year. I got the layout converted over to DCC now. I'm using the DCC-X CSB1. And now that I've got DCC decoders installed in all my locomotives, I'm back in the garage working on more layout tests at full scale in real time. Today I'm working on a point-to-point layout with fully automated reversing loops at each end, but I've stacked the reversing loops, so basically the train goes from point A on a long journey to the far end of the garage, does a nice gentle loop back, and finishes at point B, which is stacked above point A. And this is kind of interesting. I sort of like where it's going. It provides the same amount of length that the basic oval provided, but for a round trip where the train starts at point A, goes all the way to point B, and then heads all the way back down to point A, it doubles the length of the main run, and it takes a 75-foot layout and kind of turns it into a 150-foot run. So I'm really liking that. There's also something really compelling about watching the train head north, and then eventually that same train is heading south on the same main line. It feels a little more prototypical, not that I care too much about that, but it feels a little more natural than an oval to me. Something just feels better about it. I think this could make for more interesting operations too, because you could have switchers doing work in the yards and on sidings, and there will be Class 1 trains coming through periodically that they have to make room for. So a crowded main line, I think, could make for interesting operations. But with the auto reversing loops, I've also got the ability to just watch trains run. I had to make a couple modifications to my automated reversing loops from that desktop test that I did. I was getting some shorts while I was testing it on this big layout, and I couldn't figure out where the shorts were coming from, if they were coming from the auto reverser or if they were coming from the turnouts. So the first change I made was to separate the insulated joiners from the turnouts more, so I could tell if the train was shorting at the insulated joiners or if the train was shorting at the turnouts. And this was really helpful. I just don't want anything that's going wrong with the auto reverser to interfere with anything that could go wrong with the turnouts. Those should be two completely separate issues. And the second thing I did was I turned the powered frogs off on my Kato switches that I'm using as spring switches on these auto reversers. It turns out with these number 4 Kato turnouts, when the frog power is on and you're going against the switch, there is shorting. And that was part of my confusion when I was trying to bug squash this setup. But after I separated the insulated joiners from the turnouts and I turned that frog power off, I haven't had any more problems. So I'm going to continue to test a lot, both with my pocket line locomotives and with my giant bullet trains. And that's kind of the beauty of doing these full-scale test layouts in real time, is that I can stress test everything, and I'm not going to design myself into a corner, and I'm not going to get stuck on tech because I'm sort of bringing it all up together at the same time. Also, a note regarding spring switches. When I say spring switch, I don't mean that I'm trying to emulate a prototypical spring switch. All I mean is I'm using the built-in spring-loaded functionality of a Kato switch to allow my trains to complete an auto reverse loop without wiring the switch or installing any sort of infrared sensors or occupancy detection. I'm simply exploiting the fact that the Kato switches spring back, and I'm allowing the train to run over the switch against the switch, and it does just work for me anyways. Or at least it worked until I started testing the bullet trains on these reversing loops. I started getting all kinds of shorts. Then I went into deep problem solving mode. Is it the length of the train? Is it the fact that the motor is in the middle of the train? Is it the fact that the two end cars have lighting and that's creating a short? Is it the fact that I haven't installed DCC decoders into those headlights and taillights yet, and they're still sort of thinking that they're running on DC? It turns out, I think it's just the CSP1 in that main underscore auto track mode. I think it has something to do with the CSP1 and current protection. I was having the same problem when I was using it with the micro layout. Any little thing I tried to do with the CSP1, I would get all these like fault errors. And I think the current protection is too strong on the CSP1, and it's just always triggering faults. So my solution was to stop using the track B output on the CSP1 for auto reversers, and I switched back to the Digitrax AR1 auto reversers, and that seems to have solved the problem. Since I switched back to the AR1s, I've had zero issues with shorts when I'm running the bullet trains. And lastly, when I was programming the decoders for my bullet trains, I went in and tweaked a bunch of the CVs and played around with speed settings. And here you can see I've got a much higher max speed on the bullet trains now. I don't necessarily need that, but I just wanted to see what playing around with the CVs would do. And they actually provide a lot of power. You can do a lot of cool stuff by getting in and tweaking the CVs. I was actually able to fix my Kato pocket line locomotives. I installed the decoders backwards and they always ran backwards. And with the CV tweak, I could actually change the direction of those without going back in and rewiring them. I think testing with the Kato pocket line and these super long bullet trains has been great because, you know, anything I do that will work with both these tiny little pocket line engines and these huge long bullet trains, it's going to work with anything in between. So I'm kind of testing the minimum and maximum type of train that I'm going to run. And, you know, if a bullet train and the pocket line works, like anything's going to work on this layout.